Good to be up here in Jay. Hopefully, most of y'all recognize me as your state representative for District 3. I've been up here a few times. And to be honest, every time I come up here, it's a learning session. So I also, Jeff, appreciate your honesty. I think for both of us, and that makes two of us. We're not up here to tell y'all what we're going to do. To be honest, I came up here to listen today because I was talking to a couple of y'all's members. There are certain things that are in my wheelhouse, right? And they know that in the state legislature. So when I've been in Tallahassee, and there's medical bills coming up, and there's things dealing with health care, legislators come to me and they say, hey, how should I vote on this? Because you would know, right? How should we vote on this? Is this a good bill or a bad bill? So when agricultural issues come up, okay, I'm not going to go find some bureaucrat. I'm not going to go find some legislator. Hey, how should I vote on this? Because this isn't my wheelhouse. What should I do? So I'm not going to run down the hall and ask a bureaucrat. I'm going to get on the phone and call Ryan. I'm going to get on the phone and call Mickey. I'm going to get on the phone and call Jerry. And most of y'all that have been to the Farm Bureau meetings where I've been there, y'all know that that's true. When I met Jerry, I think I met you on the agricultural tour, right? And the biggest embarrassment to me as a Floridian was that half the agricultural tour for my district took place in Alabama. And I asked Jerry, why is this? And he told me about how the business climate in Florida wasn't that beneficial to farming. It was more productive to build a factory over in Alabama, more incentives over there as opposed to Florida. I talked to people like Mickey Down about the problems y'all face here on this side of the state line. And like I said, it was embarrassing. During that agricultural trip, actually, it was on that trip that we had the idea, Jerry, to take away y'all's tangible property taxes that y'all get charged on your tractors and your farm equipment. I do have an update on that we can talk about later as we get into this. But again, that should give you an example of how I operate. I don't sit in an ivory tower and say, well, let me tell the farmers what's good for them. What I do is I come up here to Jay, I go over to Baker, and y'all tell me what I need to do. That's how this works. I don't dictate to y'all. Y'all tell me why you sent me there, and then I take your message. I took it to Tallahassee, but now I'm hoping you'll let me take it to Washington, D.C. But another good example, Jerry, of that in action, right? So one of the bills we had on the floor of the Florida House this last time, man, it was a mess. It was a bill having to do with, can eye doctors really call themselves doctors? It's some hokey bill, but by the time the bill reached the House floor, we had no idea what we were voting on. The language was so garbled and everything. So what do? Again, I don't ask the guy sitting next to me, are you voting up or down? I don't call the lobbyists to say, are you voting up or down? I go in what they call the bubble. I go back in the back where we're allowed to use the telephone. I called my eye doctor in Milton. I called my eye doctor in Navarre. I said, how do you want me to vote on this? Because this is an eye doctor bill. Is this good for you or bad for you? And that's the type of attitude I want to take to Washington, D.C., because y'all know what's in your best interest. Y'all tell me, and then I relay that to D.C., and that's how I vote. At least that's what you get when you send me to D.C. You get someone who's speaking for you. And like I said, if Jeff is willing, I think maybe just take some questions, or really maybe listen to some comments and concerns more than anything, and let us just listen. Absolutely.
Between both of you is when we have a problem with government agencies, are we really going to be able to pick up the phone and say, this is Vernon Finley? This is what's going on. I just want to let you know. That's the kind of person I'm looking for. That gets up there enough to know who I am, who Ryan is, or who we are when we call you. If we just need an open line. We don't need something that gets down to the office and my system will do this, or my system will do that. Or somebody just get back in touch with you.
I agree. My office has always been the same way, and I can actually, one of the benefits of being in the state legislature is I can actually point to what I've done. I'll give you two quick examples. We just held a meet and greet down in Freeport, Florida. Now, who the heck do I know in Freeport? That ain't my district. You know what happened? I was driving home one day along Highway 20 and pulled into this little eating place on Highway 20. The lady had a tip jar out saying, "These tips are for my legal defense." And so I'm sitting there eating a burger, and I said, "What's this tip jar? Explain that to me. You may not know this, but you got a state legislator sitting here. What you got a legal fund for?" And she told about how she was fighting the development codes in Walton County, how she had built this facility, and now they want her to shut it down because they claim that, she says, they gave me the permits, and then they said those were the wrong permits, and now they're trying to shut me down. So again, there's an example of a situation 2 hours away from where I live that I stuck my nose in because she needed somebody to fight for her. And that's not even a constituent. Same thing happens in Tallahassee. I did my medical training in Daytona Beach. This last session, the legislature was thinking of shutting down the hospital in Daytona Beach. They wanted it private. Right now it's owned by Volusia County. Do you know the owners of the hospital, huge hospital where I trained, Halifax Hospital? Do you know, they didn't call their state senator and say, "Hey, fight for me." They didn't call their state representative. You know who they went to? They went to me. 7.5 hours away, because they knew, hey, if I tell Dr. Rudman the government's doing something wrong, he'll act on it. He won't just give it to his aide. He won't just give it to his secretary. He'll actually fight for us. And so my point is, if I'm willing to fight for people I don't even know, I'll fight for you and Jay.
I'm not having a huge learning curve when you first get up there. Do y'all have current relationships there? If so, can you expand upon them?
So as a physician, we have to listen to people. That's what we do. I listen to 30 people a day, every day, 5 days a week. So we know how to take people's complaints and concerns and then formalize a plan of action based on that. So I wouldn't be a successful physician in Navarre with the same practice for 20-something years if I didn't know how to build relationships as well. If I burn bridges everywhere, if I rub people the wrong way, there's plenty of doctors in Gulf Breeze and Navarre that people can choose from. They choose me. So I think that counts to my ability as well to build bridges and to have and to have proper discussions with people. I hate the term relationships, because let me tell you, as someone who now has experience in politics at a legislative body, the state body in Tallahassee, let me tell you, relationships are overrated. What y'all think is a good thing is a bad thing. Establishing relationships in the political world, that basically to them it means selling your soul. It means horse trading. It means giving a little bit of your soul. So my wife, when I was in Tallahassee, my wife called me up one day. She says, "Where are you at?" And I said, "I'm down at the governor's club. It's a bar about a block from Tallahassee." She said, "What are you doing there?" I said, "Well, I'm looking for a sponsor for my gun bill. I need a Senate sponsor, and apparently this is where all the deals get made. They get made here at the bar." She said, "Well, that's not you. Get out of there." She says, that's not how you conduct yourself. That's not how you conduct business. And so that's why I'm a little bit wary when people who are new to politics talk about how they're going to establish relationships. Look, relationships will happen. You don't have to force them. But what is important is you have to stick to your guns. You have to have guiding principles. And I think you guys have seen that in my 2+ years in the legislature, that I'm not going to sell anybody out. I think when you're overly concerned about relationships, that's how you get things like subsidies getting canceled. I think that's how you get things where, hey, your priority was kicked down the road because someone asked you to kick it down the road. So like I said, I'm not going to be overly concerned with relationships. I'm not going to be overly concerned with what Speaker Mike Johnson thinks or says. You know, he may or may not have a big agriculture component to his district. I'm not sure. But what I am going to do is represent you guys to the best of my ability. And you know, when you enter into a legislative body from that perspective, when you say, look, here's what my guiding principles are, here's why I was sent here, people respect that. You know, one of the leaders in the Republican Party in the Florida House, you know, even though I'm not there anymore, you know, I had to resign in order to run for this job. But one of the leaders used to say this about me, and I always took it to heart. He said, we like you here. Yeah, you know, you're a troublemaker, you know, and you stand up for what you believe in. He said, but we love you. And you know why we love you, Dr. Rudman? I said, why? He said, because number one, you're genuine. And number two, you're reasonable. We can deal with you. You just want what's best for your people. And so that's the attitude I'll take with you. And like I said, if I stay true to that manner, those relationships will come. We involved in health and human services in some way. I would love to have some sort of say. Y'all know that our health care needs revamping. I mean, and I can tell you why, Jerry, it needs revamping. It's because of Obamacare back in 2011. My position in the Florida House, I'm able to have conversations with Blue Cross Blue Shield, Florida, Aetna, Cigna. They'll tell you. I mean, look, and these guys are no friend of mine. I mean, I hate insurance companies. I'm a doctor. I have to fight them every day to get paid. But they will tell you, and again, we kind of have this relationship. Because we are blunt and honest with each other, we respect each other. Vice President of Blue Cross, he says, look, we don't even sell insurance anymore. We sell a product that Obama created, and we just sell it to the people, and we're just bagmen. We just collect money from it. He said, we don't have any say in what we put in that product. We don't have any say in what we cover. Obama makes us cover all that. So with Trump getting back in office, with RFK Jr., with all this wave of people coming in, wanting to make change for the right reasons in regards to your health care, I want to have a seat at that table. I also think it would be important to have a seat maybe on an agricultural committee or on a military or veterans committee or subcommittee, because obviously those are priorities for our district as well. But like you said, Jerry, I don't know exactly how much say we'll have in that. I know at the state level, to give y'all an idea, at the state level, they ask us every term, what committees would you like to serve on? I always say healthcare and ag. And I think this, you know, my first term, I didn't get any ag committees, even though I asked for it. And I got one healthcare committee out of 4, even though I asked for it. So again, I'm not sure how much say we'll actually have, but those would be my priorities. Healthcare, ag, and military.
So that's the problem we have in Washington now. People are not asking the old basic question, what's good for the country, as opposed to what's going to give me my 5 minutes of fame before television. And if you can see that and watch television today, on this confirmation hearing, you can tell a Democratic from a Republican, neither one of them is asking, what's best for the country?
Right.
What's the best for the country?
You know, there's an old saying that politics is show business for ugly people. And I think all you have to do is watch C-SPAN for a little bit and watch some of my news, and you see that's true.
And I'm sorry, your name was
Jack Crystal.
Jack. So Jack, again, I kind of like my position. You know, I'm somebody who's not into politics. I'm not a politician, but yet y'all sent me there. Y'all voted me in for 2 terms. And so I kind of see my role as I'm the guy who got to pull the curtain back a little bit, got to see how it really works. And now I get to close that curtain and come back and tell you what I saw. And what you're describing, it's absolutely right. But here's how I see it. So as a Republican who was in Tallahassee fighting for what I thought were Republican principles, here's the disconnect that I saw, and in fact, it may be a little bit of a dispute. It may be a little bit of an issue that we're going to have to sort out as Republicans. There seemed to be kind of this old guard. Now, I don't want to say it's necessarily a generational thing, but there seem to be politicians, Republican politicians, who still think we're living in the 1980s or the 1970s. They think all business is good business. Well, a lot of your businesses nowadays, they don't pledge allegiance to the American flag. You know, a lot of these businesses, they look at that and that flag means nothing to them. They're multinational corporations. So when I go around and talk about businesses, when I talk about my business, you know, Holly Navarre Medical Clinic down in Navarre, that's my sole proprietorship. I own that clinic. I don't work for a corporation. I don't work for somebody in China who tells me how to practice medicine. So my loyalties are to mom and pop businesses. My loyalties are to people like y'all, who, you know, you're the ones putting in the blood, the sweat, and the tears. So one thing I think we have to get straight as Republicans, do we pledge allegiance to these companies like Apple and these car manufacturers that want to move their factories and move all their jobs overseas and tell us to pound sand, but they're happy to come back and sell their products to Americans? See, I don't appreciate that. It's kind of like I said earlier. What I say on the stump, I say that I want to promote American businesses that build American factories, that employ American workers, that make American products for sale to the American people. You know, there's no reason why we can't do all of that within the confines of our country. We shouldn't have to ship jobs overseas, and that's where these pharmaceutical factories in China, that's where all that comes in. They're lowballing us. You know, you got some kid in China making your pill, and then they're turning around and selling it back to you. We got to fight against stuff like that.
Hey Doc, I got a question for you.
Sure.
You know, there's a lot of buzz right now about John Deere going to Mexico.
Yeah.
And there's two sides to that equation. You know, these farmers growing this 69-cent cotton are trying to buy $1 million cotton pickers, and a lot of them component is labor. So how do you tackle something like that? Because it's not just, and you know, Trump says he's gonna put all these tariffs on. I understand the concept, but you know, UAW is a big factor in the cost of a John Deere tractor.
Oh yeah.
So how do you address that? Because it's not a one size fits all.
So in the Florida legislature, you know, we believe that this is a right to work state. You have the right to work. You shouldn't have to join a union, you know, and that's the problem is these unions have so much pull and so much authority in a lot of these places. So I hear what you're saying about UAW. I totally get you there. At the end of the day, I do want to see those John Deere tractors made in the USA. I just think, you know, when you call my clinic right now and I'm not there, you know, I don't want you to get some lady in Manila, you know, some lady in the Philippines who's answering my phone just because it's, you know, 50 cents cheaper for me to hire her as opposed to hiring somebody right there in Navarre. So I think it's important that we build our tractors and build our equipment in the United States. But to answer your question on how do we keep costs down, well, I think we get the unions out there, right? I think we go after the unions, and I think we tell people, hey, look, we believe in America first. We believe in selling products to the American people, but we've got to be business friendly. And when I say business friendly, let's give John Deere some incentives to stay here, right? I'm not opposed to that. Like I said, when we did the agricultural tour, we talked, Jerry, about how Florida basically offered y'all no incentive to build your peanut shelling factory on this side of the state line. It sure would be nice to encourage businesses to stay in Florida and to stay in the United States. Because you know, you said some of those machines are $1 million, right? $1 million? Is that about right? $1 million or so?
Well, I'm not privy enough to buy one, but I can tell that they're
1.3.
Let's say they're 900,000.
So one thing we were working on, one thing I was working on at the state level until this resign to run law kicked in, you know, we've been working with y'all for a couple of years on trying to get rid of this tangible property tax. So there's a way you can afford a nice hunk of machinery because, you know, I'm not going to have to pay year after year after year on the tax on the thing. So again, these are some of those incentives we're talking about. Now, in terms of being fair to the workers, in terms of being fair to the assembly workers and people building that tractor, look, at the end of the day, you gotta believe in the free market, right? Look, the free market, it can make you, and look, it can break you too. As a doctor down in Navarre, I operate on the free market. You know, if somebody is working for me as a nurse, if I don't treat them right, if I underpay them, right, if I say, well, I'm gonna do this on the cheap so that the boss can go home with more money tonight, guess what? That nurse doesn't hang around very long. And guess what else happens? Word gets around the community that you don't want to work for Holly Navarre Medical Clinic because they grossly underpay you and you don't have any benefits, yada, yada, yada. So I'm not afraid that a John Deere factory in the United States is going to have a hard time finding labor. I don't think their point is to mistreat labor. I think those issues will take care of themselves. I think the free market will take care of that. So again, I'm not worried so much about the workers, but what I am worried about, I'm worried about on your end, when you purchase that tractor, how many times is the government going to tax you on that tractor? And that's the side of the equation we need to focus on.
Well, I want to follow up with that. I think I can speak for every farmer. We don't care if a cotton picker costs $10 million. If we can pay for it to make money, that doesn't matter.
That's right.
The problem is it's not a number. Look at the commodity prices.
Right.
USDA, you know, I'm a conspiracy guy because I believe the USDA, it manipulates numbers to keep the commodity prices down. Just look at the soybean market. Now, all of a sudden, after, you know, there was an election here not too long ago, and they wanted to keep them numbers at a certain level. Well, farmers make decisions based on what USDA says. Well, USDA says, well, there wasn't as many acres and the yields wasn't as good, but we thought that the whole time. Well, the markets, once we sell, it doesn't matter how high the crop grows, because you can only hold on to it for so long.
Right.
So, you know, it's about profitability.
That's right.
And the farmers have been left behind. We've decoupled. The train has ran away and left us. That's where we're at.
Yeah. Well, and if I could be so bold, I'm sure Jeff would agree. This is about national security. I mean, for me it is. I'm sure for Jeff too. If you don't control where your food comes from, if you don't control the source of how you feed your family, you really have no safety and security, right? If you let China corner the market on how we feed our families, Lord, we're in trouble. What are we fighting for? So yeah, so I actually see the struggle you're talking about, the issues you're talking about. This isn't just necessarily economics. It's not necessarily business. I look at it in the perspective of national security. That's how seriously I take it.
Agriculture, the way that we get paid is pretty much the opposite of free market. We're heavily subsidized by the U.S. government through our farm bill. So I would like both of your opinion on the status of that and what we can do to help us get an updated one. But I guess my opinion is, farmers have lost 25% of their gross revenue over the last couple of years. We're looking at 50% reduction over the last few years. Farmland's disappearing like crazy. So how are we going to fix the problem of a fading American farmer, I guess? And I want to know what kind of priority you got to put on that from a congressional position.
So that's a really, I mean that's really the question right there. That's really what it's all about, because we encroach upon farmland even when we don't realize it. I mean, to answer that question, we're not going to be able to do you justice. I mean, we have to sit here and break it down into this and that. I'll do my best. I think you've got to fight at the local level. In my opinion, y'all just elected and re-elected. You probably have the best Santa Rosa County commission that you've had in a long, long time. You've got Brett Rowell coming in on the commission. You've got some other new members there that I think will do you proud. So you got to fight at the county level, which you did successfully. Now, the state level, that's another thing. Right now, you have a Senate president in Ben Albritton. I've told y'all this before at Farm Bureau meetings. He's a big fan of agriculture. He's from an agricultural part of Florida. That's his background. If you walk in the Senate President's office right now in Tallahassee, he's got a big sign in his office that says agriculture. And the words are spelled out with pictures of farmland. So you've got allies right now at the county level and at the state level. But like I was saying, even when you've got the right message, and even when we get it, because look, I get it. Like I said, when I first came up here as a person asking for votes 2 years ago, and I come up to Jay, Florida, my wife literally turned to me and she said, "Boy, we need to move up here. This is beautiful." Well, she wouldn't say that, if the lots were 1/4 of an acre. She wouldn't say that if it looked like downtown Pensacola. She wouldn't say that if you try to urbanize the country aspect of the area. So one thing that your legislature did in this last session, and again, I apologize, we didn't even know it until we come back and y'all tell us. There was this bill called Live Local. I don't know if any of y'all followed it, the Live Local Act. What the Live Local bill was it basically gave your county commission further right and further opportunity to go ahead and change their land development codes to urbanize counties even more, to bring more people into Florida. Well, again, I think if more legislators had known that, you would have had a lot of pushback to that bill. So it's imperative that you fight at the county and state level. As far as what I can do for you at the federal level, I can try and find some allies at the federal level who view the world the way I view it. That look, this is a matter of national security. We are losing our farmland, and who's going to pick up the slack? Ukraine? China? Is that what y'all want? Y'all want decisions to be made based on what's best for the Ukraine? Based on what's best for China? No. We need to be dependent on a food supply that comes from us, from the United States. And believe it or not, rhetoric is really important as well. You get somebody like me who goes up there and talks this day after day, rhetoric matters. I took the oath of office. Y'all got me reelected with 79% of the vote here in November. Had my hand on the Bible. I'm getting sworn in, and within a week I had to resign to run in order to run for Congress. And people are like, "Well, what's the point? You're running for Congress now." Well, no, I still had a few more weeks left. I kept filing bills. And people are like, "Well, why are you filing bills? You're not going to be there to see them through." Yeah, but you know what? The bills I filed, election integrity, the ability to recall your corrupt officials, I had an illegal aliens bill. When you talk the talk, when you have the rhetoric, guess what? You build a platform. You make people aware of what's really going on. So rhetoric is important, and rhetoric is going to be important for agriculture too. We've got to make the case to the American people that this is an important issue. We're not just up here grandstanding. This matters. It doesn't just matter to farmers. It doesn't just matter to people in Santa Rosa County. It matters, or it should matter, to every single American in this country.
The farm bill being voted no on from our congressman because all this other stuff's tied to it. But at the end of the day, we're the ones that's getting played with. Yeah. We're the ones that it's affecting. 80% of the farm bill goes to all that other stuff. 20% of it, in a roundabout way, is what actually helps the farmers out. If you can't get it untied, which I don't think you'll be able to, but if you can't, I don't feel like we should be penalized for all this other stuff that somehow is going to get done anyway.
It's like
if it doesn't get done in that bill, it's going to get done in the next one. So, but we're the ones we're the carrots.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We gotta.
Well, they do that to hold you hostage. Is
I
what
know.
they do. That's why they put all those extra things, because they know those other things wouldn't stand a chance in hell of passing. It's like the terrorists hiding behind the woman. Well, you're the woman. They're saying you don't want to kill her, do you? And that's why they do you guys. It's like you're held hostage. But to your question, Ryan, that's why there's certain things that are principle. There's certain things that are just philosophical that you're not going to change. If you send me to D.C. and ask me to vote to murder unborn babies, I'm not going to all of a sudden change my mind and say, "Well, Ryan said to vote for abortion." So there's certain things that I'm principled on, that I just cannot budge. When you talk about policy, when you talk about foreign policy, certainly it's foreign. When you talk about agricultural policy, that's one of those situations like I described earlier about the eye doctor. That's not something within me. That's not something that I was born and bred. That's something where I get to pick up my phone and call Ryan, call Mickey, call Trent, and say, guys, explain this bill to me. Is this good or bad? So that's a situation where you're not going to have King Joel up there dictating down to you. That's a situation where I am your representative. I'm supposed to represent what you want. So that's an actually good example of where you would get a phone call and say, guys, what are we doing on this? You tell me. I'm your voice. What do you want your voice to say?
Well, I hope that comes to fruition if either one of you guys get elected. Get it from the people that know that it affects every day that are struggling so bad. Don't just try to make those decisions on your own. You know, our last guy, I suggested many times having an agriculture advisory committee where if he had to make those decisions, he could make one phone call. We'd all get together and tell him real quick how it would affect them. You know,
Yeah.
Get the information from the people that can give it to you, and that it's going to affect what your decision is going to affect. You know, in their everyday lives. But
So
I'm very concerned where agriculture is right now. I think nobody in Washington, nobody in Tallahassee, and really nobody in the country has been hungry and naked yet. And by the time we get there, there's no going back. We're not going to undo things. We're not going to unplant houses. We're not going to undo relationships.
Right.
By the time it gets there, we belong to somebody else, and
Right.
it's not going to change ever.
Well, and Ryan, to your point, you know, if it sounds like you may know or have had experience where maybe other representatives didn't check with the people, or maybe like you mentioned, it seems almost like they think they know better. I can promise you that's probably not what happens. All right, so let's say we're talking about a congressman, you know, 3 doors down. Let's say it's not even our congressman, somebody else. Let's say he does vote for the farm bill. It may not even be that he thinks he's smarter than you. You know what's happening? It's those relationships you asked me about. How important are relationships? They ain't that important because relationships entangle you. That congressman may have had somebody knock on his door and say, you know what? Don't dig into that farm bill. I want you to vote no. And if you do that for me, I'll help you with the, you know. So a lot of times when you have somebody who looks like they're going rogue or they're not listening to you, the party got a hold of them.
How are y'all going to handle that?
Well, I think
what happens. How are you?
I think I've got a track record that you can look at. You know, when the Republican Senate president goes in front of the TV cameras and says, we are not hearing any Second Amendment bills, and I file one anyway, and not only do I file one, but it passes the Florida House. There's my answer. I don't bow to pressure. I don't succumb to pressure. You know, there were people in this race. Jeff, I don't know if you know this. There were people in this race that said they were going to run for this position. And then when qualifying happened, they dropped out. You know why? Because they were pressured by other people to drop out. They got phone calls to say, you are going to stand down if you know what's good for you. Now, Ryan, they didn't bother calling me. They knew that wouldn't work on me. The phone call I actually got was from Governor DeSantis wishing me luck.
Change gears here for a minute. Mark Twain once described Congress with quivering mass of senility. What are you guys, what's your position on term limits?
Well, so that was actually a really good question, because that might be a major difference between the two candidates that are here today. Because, you know, on the opposite side of that spectrum, I've actually signed a pledge saying that if you elect me, I will support term limits for Congress. And what that would mean for myself, in the United States House of Representatives, we have 2-year terms. So I would limit myself to 3 2-year terms, 6 years. Now, again, this is why I believe it's important to send somebody who's got experience. Now, I know I haven't been in Florida for 20 years. I get it, but I was there long enough to know how the game is played. Like I said, I was able to pull that curtain back, tell y'all what's going on, close that curtain, and say, okay, well, here's what we need to change. One of the things we need to change, we've got to have term limits in Congress. And here's why. Because Nancy Pelosi, that's a good example. Well, what about Republicans? We had Strom Thurmond. Remember how old Strom Thurmond was for South Carolina? As someone who's running against a candidate who doesn't even live here, okay? And if y'all have ever heard this guy talk, your CFO, he can't string a sentence together. Every time he goes to a public event like this, he shoots his mouth off, he has to issue retractions. He blamed Republicans for gerrymandering at one of his events. At the next event, a veteran asked him, can you please get us out of the UN? And he actually defended the United Nations and said, oh, I think they do a lot of good. So the guy is a terrible representative on top of the fact that he doesn't even live here. So you would think, I just won an election with 79%, but running against that guy, I should beat him with 80% of the votes. But I won't. You know why? Because he's got the machine behind him. He's got big money behind him. And how do you get PACs and big money behind him? Well, you hang around 20 years. You hang around 30 years. See, the elephant who's not in the room, the kid who should be here but isn't, he's been in politics since the late 1990s. That's how you amass a $10 million war chest. So if you put term limits in place in Congress, you won't have the ability to have these people amass all this power and all this sway and all this, and that's why they kept getting reelected. My argument would be, it's not that people love Nancy Pelosi. It's not like we love Strom Thurmond or the Republicans in South Carolina love Strom Thurmond. It's just that the machine takes over. Strom Thurmond wasn't knocking on doors when he was 70 years old. They just had the money to put out all these flyers, put out 10 flyers a week for Strom Thurmond. So that's why you've got to disable the machine. You must have term limits. And like I said, I've already signed a pledge that I will support U.S. term limits.